Good morning and welcome everyone to this January 22nd, 2025 policy session of the Water Environmental Services Board of Directors. District Administrator Gary Schmidt, would you please do the roll call for us?
Yes, thank you, Chair Roberts. Director West and Director Schrader are not at the meeting today. You do have a quorum present. Roll call. Director Savas.
Present.
Director Fireside.
Here.
Chair Roberts.
Here. All right, thank you, Gary. Would you please introduce the first session for us there?
So as you mentioned, you are meeting as the Water Environment Services Board of Directors. This policy session is Water Environment Services 2025-2030 Capital Improvement Plan. This is an informational update only. Greg Geist, the director, is out ill today, so presenting today is Ron Waringa, who's the Assistant Director of Water Environment Services, and Jeff Stallard, who is the Capital Program Manager for the district. Go ahead, please.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you. Good morning, Chair Roberts and members of the board. As Gary said, I'm Ron Waringa, Assistant Director of Water Environment Services. I have Jeff Stallard, who's our Capital Program Manager, to help answer questions if you have them today about our projects. As Gary said, Greg is unable to be here today, and he sends his regrets. He wanted me to be sure that I recognize our engineers and construction managers and our talented capital group and convey our deep appreciation and pride for the work that they do, and we will present that to you today. Our goal today is to present to you our 5-year capital improvement plan for WES, which is what wastewater and stormwater infrastructure that we need to build over the next 5 years. And so let's go ahead and get into that, recognizing we have some new board members. We're going to talk a little bit about WES. We are a special district. We provide wastewater and surface water management services to about 200,000 residents in the urbanized area of Clackamas County. From the far reaches of Happy Valley, west to downtown Milwaukee, and as far south as Oregon City and Westland, as you can see on the map here. Some numbers about what we do. We run 5 wastewater treatment plants. We clean about 7 billion gallons of water every year and send that to the Willamette River. Serve about 200,000 people. We have a series of pump stations and our regional conveyance system that helps us move wastewater around to where it needs to go, and about 360 miles of sanitary sewer pipes, and that's just our stuff. It doesn't include the cities that we serve. We have an authorized FTE in our department of 118 employees. The capital improvement plan, or CIP, that we're presenting to you today is a rolling 5-year plan that identifies and prioritizes our wastewater and surface water construction projects and our major equipment purchases for the district. The plan is reviewed, revised, and approved annually by our board. The 5-year CIP serves as a basis for our proposed capital budget, which requires separate and annual review and approval by the board in a different setting. The overall budget is primarily funded through monthly rates that we charge our customers and system development charges. We'll be talking to you about system development charges in March, and our annual budget process will follow that. So that's kind of the sequence that we follow. Adopting and funding the CIP are 2 separate things. This is what we want to build with cost estimates and when we want to build it. It's our plan, and it's largely a technical document. The proposed plan that we're presenting today calls for about $247 million, almost $248 million, to continue accommodating rapid growth in our service area and deliver the necessary improvements to our existing infrastructure that we need to keep going.
Ron, can I ask you a quick question? Just a clarification. When you say our board, which board are you referring to?
The Board of Directors of WES.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. And so how do we know what projects we need to build? Because we're investing in planning for the future, we do master plans for our infrastructure that tell us our current condition of our assets and the future condition, and what we will need to build to increase our capacity for population growth in our region. These plans are the foundation of our understanding. We know what we need to build, when we need to build it, and how we're going to pay for it. The 5-year CIP reflects these needs. We've continued to refine our long-range financial plan that accompanies this capital plan that shows predictable and reasonable rate increases over the next 10 years or so. Our proposed CIP takes care of our existing infrastructure and maintains what we have. The plan has about a 50-50 split in what we call capacity, which is new capacity in the systems and our infrastructure for growth, and then 52% reliability, which is like ongoing rehab and rehabilitation, and about 1.4% on addressing regulatory needs that may influence what we build as well. In the interest of brevity, we'll highlight construction projects primarily related to building capacity for growth, but know that over half of our plan is repair and maintenance of our current infrastructure. It's an ongoing need. We do have some uncertainty in the regulatory piece, our future regulatory obligations. That said, we work very closely with our industry peers and the Department of Environmental Quality and EPA to anticipate and influence, to the extent we can, future regulations and permit requirements that will impact our ratepayers. So this is a chart of our projected spending in the plan that's before you today. Recall that it is a total 5-year CIP cost of about $248 million. This chart shows the year-over-year spending over the course of the plan. The dark bars are the planned wastewater expenditures, and the light blue bars are our surface water expenditures that are in the plan. We'll talk a little bit more about this. Did you have a question? No. So highlighting a few projects that are in the plan, and these are really kind of linchpin projects for our communities, kind of working downstream from where growth is happening in Happy Valley to our treatment plant in Oregon City. The map, this is a map of our Clackamas Interceptor program. On the right side is where Highway 224 splits from Highway 212 and heads to Carver. The left side is moving west, and the red star is along Highway 224 and I-205 near Lowe's and CarMax. And that red star marks our intertie pump station that determines where flows go, either to our Kellogg Creek treatment plant in Milwaukee or to Tri-City in Oregon City. As we've said, Happy Valley is rapidly growing, and we need to build capacity to convey those future flows to our treatment facilities. In order to convey those flows that are in our sanitary sewer master plan, the Clackamas Interceptor needs to be expanded. The Interceptor is a gravity system, so the entire 5 miles of it are being all designed together, and the project will be built in phases in future years, which are color-coded on the slide, the different colors on the lines where it marks the Interceptor. Again, talking about the red star on the map, capacity at our Kellogg Creek treatment plant in Milwaukee is highly limited. It's capped. We don't have room to expand that facility for future growth. But as we know, Happy Valley grows, and as that area continues to march out into the urban growth boundary, some of that flow is redirected to our Tri-City facility at that intertie pump station. So that's another project we want to highlight. The red star is now on top of the map on the screen. It shows the pipeline that will move wastewater from that point south to our facility in Oregon City. The intertie pump station and force main project expands the pumps and pipes to move this flow. We currently have a pressurized 20-inch, I think, force main, and we'll be adding additional sections of a 30-inch force main along that alignment. And in addition, we'll increase the capacity of the pump station, enhance controls for more seamless operation. And then there's one more phase of this expansion that's planned around 2030. We've talked to you a bit in the past about our outfall project, which we call our Clackamole project. This has been a really fun but scary project. It's a really kind of a technical marvel, and the Clackamole communication campaign that we did around it is kind of a whimsical way to help us connect with our ratepayers about this really important investment. We are constructing currently a second outfall to send treated water from our Tri-City facility to the Willamette River, just downstream of the I-205 bridge, to accommodate future growth in our region. About half of the tunnel that is being built is being constructed with a tunnel boring machine. That's the Clackamas itself. And half of it is a traditional dig, is a trenching and put a pipe in it method. The tunnel boring machine is 9 feet in diameter. It's 50 feet long. Convention is like we had said, to name them. We took the opportunity again to connect with our customers and with a social media campaign supported by our partners in public and government affairs. We had over 650 name submissions, and we had over 650 name submissions, and the board selected the Clackamas moniker for it. The machine, the tunnel boring machine, is done tunneling. It's currently laying at the bottom of the Willamette River. We expect to lift the tunnel boring machine out of the river January 28th.
Yep, next week.
Next week. So we'll pull it out of the water, and it will have completed its journey, and then Jeff and his team will do the necessary preparations to bring that outfall online so we can start using it in the near future. It's been an amazing project. Another project we wanted to highlight is at our Tri-City facility, which we call our wet weather expansion. This increases our capacity to treat peak wet weather flows during heavy storms. At our wastewater treatment plants, you do see significant increases in flow during wet weather events. It's mostly rainwater and groundwater that infiltrates our system, and so it's a different type of treatment process that we can use to treat those really infrequent high flow events. We're adding an entirely new treatment process in the orange and blue areas on this slide that are currently unoccupied land. The cost estimate here is in the recommended plan that we do believe meets DEQ's regulatory requirements, and we're actively engaged with DEQ to make sure it's approvable when we get to building the project. This project is identified in our broader Willamette facilities plan, and DEQ has signaled that they are able to approve that plan sometime in the next couple weeks. So that's a huge milestone for us as well. On the surface water side, we just wanted to share one of our significant projects that's in the northern part of our service area. We own a protected area, the Three Creeks protected area, that's near the Clackamas Community College Harmony campus and the aquatic park, if you know where that is, near the town center area. We're in the process of designing this stream and floodplain restoration project on this nearly 80-acre site. The goal is to improve water quality and reduce downstream flooding and improve stream habitat, all of which are important to our watershed health mission. In addition, we'll optimize an existing flood control facility that the county built several decades ago to reduce some of the frequency of more frequent smaller storms. That current facility really just treats large storms, so we're going to modify the operation of that to get it working for us a little better. It's had the site itself is a fantastic resource for educational groups like the Clackamas Community College Environmental Learning Center and Trackers Earth Portland, who use that site frequently. It's about a $4 million project, and we did receive a $620,000 grant from Metro Nature and Neighborhoods program to help fund this project, and that should go to construction next year. This slide shows the Northwest Construction Cost Index that we follow from 2009 to 2024 on the slide. As you can see, we saw some historic increases in construction costs in 2020 and 2021. The costs have started to stabilize in the marketplace, which also aligns with our most recent bids that we're seeing come in that are under engineers' estimate or very close. So it is starting to level out a little bit. As we mentioned earlier, the cost estimates in this plan before you were updated from the previous CIP that was approved in 2024. Yeah, so we do follow that, and the prices for the costs in the project have been adjusted. Again, adopting the CIP and funding it are two separate actions. We just wanted to share our overall financial planning strategies and our commitments. We are shooting for steady, predictable rate increases for our customers and our partner cities, maintaining appropriate reserves for the future, maintaining an appropriate debt coverage ratio to make sure that when we do need to finance our projects, we have a good rate and seeking and securing external funding and grant opportunities wherever we can. We're very active in that area. We are planning on our financial plan further out than 5 years. The industry standard is 10 or 11 years. We have a longer-range CIP and a long-range financial plan that's part of our budget document, so you can find it in there. So you can see how we're planning to make sure we can reliably and sustainably fund these projects. That our longer-range financial plan shows we can fund a $363 million and $42 million surface water CIP while maintaining a steady 5% annual rate increase for our customers. Again, and Greg is often says this, we know what we need to build, when we need to build it, and pending board approval and future budget processes, how we intend to pay for it. So process-wise today, this is an informational presentation on our CIP. We can schedule future policy sessions and continue our conversation. We can have individual meetings with you to answer questions that you may have. The formal adoption of the plan will be done by bringing a resolution to the board at a future business meeting for a vote. And with that, we thank you for your time and are happy to answer any questions you may have.
Commissioners, any questions?
I want to yield to you all first before I ask some questions.
Melissa, go ahead.
Sure. I just, yesterday, we just met with Wes, actually, and so going over the budget and everything was super helpful. I guess one of the questions that came up for me was kind of about contingency and like, you know, inevitably something will fail, right? And so I guess I just was hoping you could give me a little bit more background on that because we just didn't have time to discuss it yesterday, so.
Yeah. We do have contingency both built into projects and in our overall budget process, but I'll let Jeff talk about, if you're willing, to how we handle uncertainty with our cost estimates.
Yeah, so planning level estimates, and in the CIP, you'll see there's a discussion or a paragraph, a topic on kind of construction estimates, what level of certainty we have around these estimates at planning levels, and the uncertainty, quite frankly, around it. We do carry contingency appropriate based on the level of estimate, which is kind of how detailed of design and information you have. And so these numbers in the CIP, we refine them over time, so we update this annually. We're working on projects and understanding more, and so we will go in and as estimates change and capture those in CIPs and work with finance, and that might impact, you know, when we can deliver something, the timing of things, and so it's an iterative process for sure. Related to reliability, outside of kind of construction costs, but just infrastructure that we own currently, we have a pretty robust asset management plan that really helps us stay on top of our maintenance. And within this budget, or within our budget annually, we have about $800,000 that we use on renewal and replacement projects. And so those are not necessarily a full-blown capital project with a lot of design, but hey, we need to replace these pumps that are at the end of their useful life. And so we have budget allocated within our budget to work with our maintenance group to identify those through our asset management program and then spend that money to make sure that we're not running things to failure. Failure is not our preference. Our preference is to run to the end of kind of the useful life and then either overhaul or replace before they fail. I hope that answers
No,
both
that's
sides of that
that's
question.
super helpful. Thank you. And then I know we're going to have a more robust conversation around SDCs in March. I'm just curious, just very generally, how you see that keeping up with what we need to, you know, develop to capacity, what that looks like, so that I can ask the right questions before we meet in March, if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah, our conversation that we plan to have with the board in March is about our SDC methodology, and that is what we're required by statute to have the board adopt in order to set SDCs. So in that, just to preview, when we meet, we will talk about, it is informed by this capital plan, and it helps us calculate what we could charge for the portion of these projects that are SDC eligible. What we could charge in an SDC for that. It's essentially called a theoretical SDC. And then we'll have a conversation about where the board really wants to land with an SDC. It's more of a policy call. The SDC methodology tells you what you could charge, and then there's a conversation around setting it there. It is difficult for SDCs to keep up with growth for the, you know, for all the capacity improving projects in our plan. But we are in a position where we, as staff and the board, have been mindful about making sure an SDC is set at sort of the, at a good spot where we do collect enough revenue to keep supporting the projects. Our SDCs are high compared to our partners in the region, which is actually, we view it as a good thing because, we are ensuring that future connectors to the system are paying a proportionate share. So more to come on that.
That's all I have, Chair. Thank you.
Great. Commissioner Savas?
Craig, do you have any questions?
I just had a couple closing comments, so I'll go ahead.
So, if you'll indulge me, and I think staff knows I've been in this world since the 90s, so I have some questions, and that might spawn, obviously, some questions that my colleagues might want to ask in the near future, if not today. So just a little bit of background, so I'm not surprising my colleagues here today. First of all, I will say that I'm really appreciative of our discussion yesterday, and Chair Roberts is inclined to have more work sessions and more opportunities to interface with the departments, and I really feel that this particular special district has not had the time and attention of the board that I think it truly deserves. So when I ask the question about when you say the board or our board, I want to make sure it's this one, and also bring attention to my colleagues that there's also the advisory committee, and there's a story on how that got created. So there's a long history. And when I got here, there was a 15 years ago when I got here, there was a 25-year standing dispute between the city of Milwaukee and at that time, CCSD1. And so there were a number of things that intertwined, so to speak, within CPRD with regards to the riverfront property, which is now Milwaukee Bay Park, and our activity there. So we're neighbors with Milwaukee Bay Park, and there were promises made and promises kept, and being the lead negotiator for solving that 25-year dispute, I remember that. I feel still a responsibility to make sure we live up to our end of the bargain in several ways, and I'll just touch on a couple, not all of them, just a couple that are relevant today to the CIP. So, with that, I brought this up to Greg last week a little bit, and I was hoping to maybe hear back from him. But one thing in particular was that as being a good neighbor, the issue back for years has been odor, right? Odor going into downtown, or activity or odor going into the park for park, patrons. And with regard to that, the truck traffic and trucking and, the liquid that we truck, about 8 trips a day, as Greg told me yesterday, or last week, it was 8 trips a day of trucks, big trucks, double tanker trucks going from Milwaukee, loading, and then going to Tri-Cities for centrifuge and dewatering and all of that.
Solids processing.
Yeah, the solids, all of that happening there. But the issue I'm trying to bring to attention here, just to be as clear and brief as I can, is that the plan was to put dewatering in place at Kellogg so there'd be less trucks and less opportunity for odor release and so forth. And the truck traffic and the bridge and all of that, long story there, but I won't go into the bridge right now. But per se, the promise was that we would reduce truck traffic. That was a promise made, and that's still something that in the middle of the summer, when patrons of the park are, enjoying Milwaukee Bay Park, no one wants to see a truck, even on whether it's a weekday or a weekend, no one wants to see that much trucks going in and out of there. So I was surprised when I asked the question to Greg, so when are we going to do that? I mean, I know we're about ready to launch the administration building. I know that's, that might be a benefit for the community, but I understand the benefit for staff and the efficiencies of that. But I'm puzzled by the fact that this has been kicked. Greg didn't mention that it's still in the plan and it's before us today, but if we're going to live up to that promise, one of a few, I want to make sure we're actually doing it, not kicking it. And I know that there's other priorities maybe, and I think Greg shared with me, well, we did the cost estimate balance, and it's, the cost of trucking it and the cost of it balances out, but still it doesn't balance out the promise made, right? So I want to just let you know that while a lot of elected officials that were there 15 years ago are gone, or 5 years ago are gone, and even staff here at West, there's been a lot of attrition that I stand here today as a reminder that that is something I want to live up to, right? So I would like, and Greg's not here, but I would like, and I kind of signaled to Greg last week, let's talk about this. I'm not comfortable kicking the can on this one. So I want to convey that. So let's get back to slide 9. If you could put slide 9 back up, that'd be appreciated.
You want me to go to slide 9?
There we go. So you mentioned part of this is force main, right? And how much of it is gravity?
All of this is force main.
All of it's force
Yep.
main. So we're pumping it uphill essentially.
Yes, from that Lowe's location, it comes up, hangs off the bridge there across near High Rocks and comes down to the plant from there. But it's a force main where there's no connections. It might flow by gravity at the end, but it's a force main.
Right. And we're doing this for capacity reasons. We're not doing this because of environmental reasons. It's just really capacity. And if we don't build this, I'm just trying to justify why this is important. If we don't do this, then, when that's maxed out, we got to send that to Kellogg. And Kellogg's got some constraints, and sometimes the Kellogg plant floods, and that's not environmentally a sound practice. So I just want to just say that that's really important. So in this area, there was, on the I&I side, there was an issue with a large infiltration somewhere in the Happy Valley area. I wasn't really sure where, because we weren't sure where it is. And I know that's contributing to our water issue. So can you give me an update on that? Have you identified what it is and the fix?
Sure, yeah. So as part of our CIP, and we didn't really bring it up here, but as part of our facility plan, our collection system master plan, we did evaluate kind of flow rates and peaking factors when rain occurs. And so obviously older parts of our system have higher infiltration rates and higher impacts due to rainwater. The specific one you're talking about, Commissioner Savas, is in the Mount Scott area. There was, that is our area, the West-owned infrastructure that has a peaking rate that was more than what would be industry norm for that area, size and area. So it's responding with more water coming down than we should expect. So we've been spending the last 2 years investigating that area, and we found this summer an infiltration basin that served a large development, a hospital facility up in that region, and that was all a service lateral was improperly disconnected from, and so we were literally just piping their stormwater right into our sewer. So we were able to fix that. Very cheap fix, obviously, for the amount of impact it had on our system, and that brought that basin almost within what we would expect to have occurred by 2030. And so as part of that kind of I&I, we're continuing to every other year renew our hydraulic model to see how are the efforts we're spending out in our communities and also with our member cities, how that's responding with targets of what that I&I reduction would be. And so there was analysis done that said, essentially, it's cheaper to make investments in tying up I&I and reducing I&I than it is to build big treatment capacity at the plant, right? It's just a better way to invest in our future. It was about $120 million of savings to our ratepayers to approach it that way. So that's something that we're really focused on. And so those small victories are really a lot of bang for our buck from that perspective. So I hope that answers your question.
So just in short, the big leak in the Mount Scott area is fixed?
That one is fixed. We're not done searching for others, but we found that one on our mission to kind of reduce that down to a level that's acceptable.
Okay. And if you have an opportunity to brief my colleagues in the future, maybe explain why the new construction is so ideal when it comes to I&I, because it's all tight, it's mostly plastic. It's not the old stuff that Gladstone is and Oregon City and West Link are old establishing, because there's a lot of rate upset, by the way, because of some of the investments that are being made in the older portions, including Oak Lodge even as well, right? So there's a lot of old stuff. So that area is less prone to I&I challenges. But that was a big one I thought was a little bit needed to be fixed. So thanks for that. The other issue, you mentioned Three Creeks. I know that's not the great map, but the Three Creeks. And Ron, you and I talked about this at length a couple years ago. what my colleagues probably don't realize is that there's an area there just south of Three Creeks, that neighborhood that floods, and some of those residents there have experienced flooding under, high flows when it's really wet. And my concern about changing the height, you want to change the height of the water retention of the dams, if you want to call them that. Do we have any more data or estimates on if we're going to actually relieve that flooding, or if we are going to keep it the same, or is it going to exacerbate it? I'm concerned that maybe what's proposed would make it worse. I don't think that's an option for us.
Yeah. We are, we're near 100% design on that project. And so, our hydraulic models are what tell us, what we think the impact will be on really the water surface elevation is the most important thing that we're talking about. The amount of flow, all that sort of stuff doesn't really matter. What matters is it here or here? And when it's higher is when it spreads out and floods that Lake Road area that you're talking about. In no way will our project make it worse. We would have to release flows at a higher rate than are currently going through that area, and we're not doing that. The dam that was built there by the county in the 90s, late 90s, was really put in to handle very, very high surface storm events and surface water flows that would really only control peak rates of flows discharged from that system at storms that I don't think we've seen in 15 to 20 years, but they're possible. So what we don't get from that site is engagement of the floodplain and reduction of peak storm flows at lower events, at smaller events that are much more frequent, like an annual or biannual or even a 5-year storm. And so rather than the dam itself can't be configured to control flows at the really high levels, like at a 20 or 50-year storm, and also at the lower level. So that's why we're intending to restore the floodplain there with a more natural system, kind of a natural infrastructure approach to get those less frequent storms, an annual high event 2-year, even a 5-year event spreading out on the floodplain before it even gets to the dam. And we do think we'll reduce peak flows in the 1, 2, and 5-year events doing with that approach. And I would have to get back to you on what the model is telling us we think we might see in terms of a water surface elevation reduction.
Yeah, there's nothing more, especially when they're lower income, the impacts of having your property flooded. And that's been an area where it's just the lay of the land, if you will, but I just didn't want to make it worse, and I was hoping that we relieve some of those. And I think that's kind of what you're saying. Potentially, there's a possibility for relief.
There is absolutely a possibility for relief. Quantifying it, we can only estimate with models, but we do think that we can reduce the frequency of flooding. That's the goal. Okay. During design and when planning for projects like this, you're kind of faced with a couple options. One, do we want a structure to flood 6 inches deep or 4 inches deep? Both not good options. But then the other approach is saying, structures that are in the floodplain and even in the floodway that have been built there, they're probably going to flood at some high events. Our goal is to reduce the frequency so that if something might flood during a 5-year to a 2-year event, we can make it now a 5-year event or a 10-year event. That's the goal of the design, is to reduce that frequency.
Right. Switching over, are we still on schedule for completion this year for the Aldercrest flooding project that we're working on?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Okay. Lastly, I think last one. On the SDC discussion, it's the yin and the yang is that if the SDCs are too low and you're have a high growth area, then the established ratepayers are paying the bill, so the rates go up, and most of the established neighborhoods, they're not paying SDCs, they're already there, right? It's the new development. So, while I appreciate the fact that, the committee is doing their best, and we are doing our best to get those SDCs where they're paying their fair share, if you will. The number I look for is recovery, and as you mentioned, the the methodology tells you what you can charge for an SDC. No one ever does, because that's a real high number. And then what we actually do charge. But do you have that recovery percentage that you can share with us, or can you get it to us?
By recovery, do you mean like how close we are to the theoretical?
Well, for example, if so let's say a project that costs $100 million would require an SDC of $30,000 for an SDC, right? And we're charging $10,000, so our recovery is
Right.
is what 30% recovery, right?
Yep.
We're recovering 30% of what we could charge, and some people say what you should charge. No one's going to do that. I'm not saying we're doing anything wrong. So that's what I mean recovery. So how much are we recovering under current SDC model?
Yeah, so preview, and I don't want to spoil it, that's what the methodology will recalculate that theoretical SDC from the last time that we did that calculation. It's what is coming out at now in our methodology report is probably around 12,500, let's say. Don't quote me on that. I'll get you the real number when we present. And our current SDC, because we index our SDC for inflation every year, is at around 9,100. So we're in the 70 to 75% range in terms of the proportion of SDC that we charge today to what the theoretical is coming out at under this capital plan.
Yeah. And I'll just say in passing that if you're a math wonk or algorithm wonk and love spreadsheets and calculations, study the SDC methodology. It's a great exercise. It's fascinating, actually. I don't mean that jokingly. It is fascinating.
And in our conversation coming up on our SDC methodology, we have run some hypotheticals. Aaron Blue, who's here today, our finance manager, and I have been working through some hypothetical financial modeling, and we can present to you the impact on rates for setting SDCs at different levels so that the board is aware of what that impact is exactly.
Right. I appreciate the discipline we've applied here, where I wish perhaps some other districts locally, I wish they would have maintained the discipline of maintaining and doing the O&M and making the investments when they were promised, but they backed off that, and I think some areas, not West, but some areas are experiencing some striking things. And I think that's something I need to share some local concerns right now with one area in town in which we're providing sewer service, but we're not providing potable water. But we have a challenge with one particular district that overlaps into the West. So I've been taking complaints that are redirecting back to the district responsible as opposed to us. So I want to make sure my colleagues understand that as well. Well, thank you for that, and I'm hoping we can come back with discussion on the trucking, the trucks, whether they're going in and out of the property where Milwaukee Bay Park is, or whether they're going up and down McLaughlin Boulevard 8 times a day. But I really not comfortable kicking that can.
I understand. And yeah, I know we'll talk about that in the future. As you said, Commissioner Savas, we certainly do intend to do solids handling at Kellogg in the future. I totally understand you're talking about the timing, and I think when we come back and present that, Jeff and his team will be helpful in helping explain sort of the sequence of the planned improvements at Kellogg, which likely influence when that dewatering will happen, but more than happy to have a conversation and talk about the timing.
Yeah, again, I'll close with this, and that is that I think there's a concern that the high growth areas are getting a lot of the investment and attention, and some of the established areas are not. I think that's a political concern I've been hearing out there, and so again, the other aspect is promises made, promises kept, and
Sure.
We're 15 years since we signed that agreement.
Yeah, a Kellogg Creek specific conversation sounds totally appropriate.
Okay, thank you. Chair, I yield back.
Thank you. And I just want a quick comment, and Melissa and I had the chance to meet with you and Greg Geis, and I see Aaron in the back, and I will just want to say I was completely impressed, and really also impressed about your long-range really financial plan, your long-range structural plan, and really a lot of preparation about how to meet the needs for Clackamas County in the future. And the one thing I think it's also great to reiterate for the public really is the service delivery that you guys do. I mean, when I thought about 359 miles of sanitary sewer pipes, 23 pump stations, 198,000 people, population served, 7 billion gallons per year cleaned, and 5 water resource recovery facilities. And it was just really, I have to say, I was very impressed with your presentation. I'm looking forward to learning more, and I can't wait to see this Clackamole. So with that being said, if there's no further questions, I'll remind my colleagues there's no action that's required today. It's currently scheduled to return to staff to us to answer questions to our and any other necessary updates to the plan on February 5th, at which time we will decide whether to advance the plan for adoption at a future business meeting. So with that being said, this policy session is adjourned.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.